Have you ever been watching a movie or a TV show or sitting in a meeting and looking at someone and just thinking, why don't they just do something? Well, in today's episode of Introspective, we're going to talk about a game mechanism that is exactly that with this, the do something pawn, today in Introspective. Welcome to Introspective. My name is Scott Nicholson, and I'm a professor of game design. And on each episode, I take a small part of a game and go into depth about it and explore it, go off on a few tangents. And today, we're going to be starting with a game component of a game called Magic Maze. Now, Magic Maze by Casper Lapp is a cooperative game where you're working together to go through a series of tiles like this one, trying to work your way through a maze. What's interesting about the game is, unlike games like this where you might expect that each player in the game controls a character in the maze, in this game, each player in the game controls a direction. And so one player can move all of the characters up, another player can move all the characters to the left. The game is played simultaneously. So whenever you think you want to move someone to the left, you can reach out and grab those pieces and move them to the left. And the goal is to get everyone to find a certain spot in the maze and then get them all out. But you only have a short amount of time to do so. The game is very chaotic. And that introduces the do something pawn. Now, when they were designing this game, I imagine they started out and created the game concept and found that people would tell each other what to do. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But they needed some way to prevent people from doing that to make the game more interesting. So they created the game such that you couldn't communicate during the game. You couldn't talk to each other. There are a few moments where you can plan in the game, but during the actual intense short time you have to move these characters out of the maze, you can't talk to each other. But the one thing you can do is pick up this do something pawn and slam it down in front of someone, glare at them, because that's indicating that they have a move that would be useful, and you can tell them, do something already. So the game is really funny to watch because people will be staring at the board, moving characters around, and all of a sudden someone will sweep up the pawn and slam it in front of someone else and glare at them. And then sometimes that person will look up, pick the pawn up, and put it in front of that person and glare back at them. This is how you got to glare, see? Yeah, you got to do that. Anyway, so in this game, what this pawn does is a couple interesting things. One of the problems with cooperative board games is the issue of quarterbacking. So quarterbacking in a game is a term based off of American football, where the quarterback is one of the players on the team that will call the shots of what's going to go on, that will call the play. That's the person that receives the ball at the start of the play, and they will call out what's going to happen. They might make changes based on the situation, but the idea is that the quarterback is in charge on the field. In cooperative board games, quarterbacking is when one player is telling other players what to do. And it can be very annoying, to be honest. It can be frustrating to be someone who is being quarterbacked, to being told what to do all the time, to the point that it can really ruin the game for people. Now, I understand why people quarterback, because they see a situation in the game, they see something that needs to happen, and so we're all working together, so the idea is, I'm going to tell you what to do, so that we have a better chance of succeeding. And it's a real problem in escape rooms as well. I will see escape room teams where one person is telling everyone what to do. And again, that can be really frustrating for someone else that just wants to explore the game or play the game. And so what the do something pawn does is it helps to reduce that quarterbacking, because it allows someone who has an idea that someone else should do something to convey to that person, hey, there's something you can do, but it is up to that person to figure out what to do. Part of what the do something pawn does is it sets up hero moments. So hero moments is something I talk about with escape room design. That when you make an escape room, you want to make it so there are moments where each person gets to be the hero, or each person gets to do something cool. And so the do something pawn sets us up for that. To do something pawn sets the stage where someone says, hey, you can do something interesting, and then that person can figure out what to do and do the thing and feel good about what they've done. Now, it also, though, can create pressure. It can create undue pressure. Someone gets this pawn put in front of them, and then they just start panicking because they're looking at the board trying to figure out what it is they should do. Now, the game has some elements and opportunities that you have where you can talk about things for a short period of time. So the do something pawn, if someone's confused, could then lead to the team deciding to take one of those breaks and talk about what the situation is. But it's an interesting way to deal with quarterbacking. Now, over the years, this has been a challenge for designers. We didn't know it was a challenge at first. We were making cooperative games and just accepting that this would happen. But then we started to think about how do we make games that control this information, that control the situation a little bit more to prevent quarterbacking. So Hanabi, for example, is a card game where you don't see your cards, but you see everyone else's cards, but you're very limited in what you're able to communicate about those cards. And when it's not your turn, you're not actually supposed to say anything. Some people do, but you're supposed to remain quiet and let each person decide what information they're going to share. Other games, like The Mind, for example, you don't say anything. You just sort of stare at each other and hopefully are able to play cards from your hand that go in sequence from 1 to 100. There are games like Sentinels of the Multiverse, where each player is playing a superhero and they have their own deck of cards. And each deck of cards is very different mechanically, so that I can't tell you what to do because your deck and your mechanisms that you're working with are very different than my own. And that reduces the quarterbacking. Although, if someone really knows Sentinels well and they've played a lot of the characters, they can fall right back into quarterbacking, telling people how it is they should play their cards or how they should play their decks. Other games play with player roles so that each player has specific things they need to do. So Captain Sonar, for example, each player at the table has a specific role and specific things they're trying to accomplish. It's also a live time game where you're playing versus another team, sitting across from another team, so you really don't have the time to do much quarterbacking. So we talked about different ways that designers are creating games that make it hard to quarterback. But what about you as a player? How can you reduce your urge to quarterback? Recognize that this is a frustrating thing. It upsets people who are trying to explore the game, trying to understand what's going on, trying to have the same ahas and paths of discovery that you had when you were learning the game, and you're taking that away from them by just telling them what to do. And part of that has to be your mindset, that you have to recognize that winning is not the most important thing. That if you are telling someone what to do just so you can win and they're going to be upset or have a bad game experience, maybe it's okay to lose and let them explore the game. And then you can try again and they're going to be a better player because they're going to have explored things and will learn about the consequences of making certain choices. If they never get a chance to make those choices, they don't get to see the consequences of those choices. So it's okay to lose a game, because we're really about creating this experience with the people at the table. Now, sometimes someone will ask for advice, and that's one recommendation I would have. The first recommendation would be, don't quarterback unless someone is asking for advice. If someone asks for advice, you can give them advice, but otherwise, let them go ahead and make their moves and make their choices, and just accept that it's okay, that you're not going to win the game every time. Another way to deal with this is to have a leader token that you pass around the board. And the idea is that during each round of play, the person who is the leader can give advice to everyone, is kind of in charge, but then at the end of the turn, they're going to pass that to the next person. And when it's not your turn to be the leader, well, you keep your mouth shut and don't suggest to people what to do. Let them enjoy the game. And that can be a way for a game that does need quarterbacking for you to be successful, because you need that sort of coordination and planning. By passing around a leader token, you can help create the situation where everyone gets a chance to be the leader and everyone gets a chance to be the hero. So next time on Introspective, I'm going to talk about this bundle of money and how it makes a board game a little bit more immersive. Until then, stop that quarterbacking and be introspective. Bye-bye.